Have you ever been in a relationship where something just didn't feel right, but you couldn't quite explain why? On the surface, everything might look fine, maybe even perfect to outsiders. But deep down, there's a quiet discomfort, a feeling that you're slowly losing yourself. You might be dating a narcissist. Now, that word gets used a lot these days, and it's important to be clear. This isn't about labeling someone after one bad argument. It's about patterns. Consistent behaviors that leave you feeling confused, drained, and emotionally off balance. Let's start at the beginning. Because with a narcissist, the beginning is almost always intoxicating. They come on strong, very strong. They might compliment you constantly, tell you how special you are, how different you are from anyone they've ever met. It feels like you've been chosen. This phase is often called love bombing, and it can feel amazing, like a dream. They text you all the time. They want to see you constantly. They make big promises about the future. And naturally, you start to open up. You trust them. You invest emotionally. But slowly, things begin to change. The attention becomes inconsistent. The warmth starts to fade. And you find yourself wondering, what did I do wrong? That question becomes a pattern. Because one of the biggest signs you're dealing with a narcissist is how often you feel at fault, even when you're not. In healthy relationships, disagreements happen, but both people take responsibility. With a narcissist, responsibility is almost always avoided. If there's a problem, it's somehow your fault. If they hurt you, you're too sensitive. If you bring up an issue, you're starting drama. Over time, this begins to affect how you see yourself. You start second-guessing your reactions. You start shrinking your needs. And that leads us to another major sign: lack of empathy. Empathy is the ability to understand and care about someone else's feelings. It's the foundation of emotional connection. But with a narcissist, empathy is often missing or conditional. When you're upset, they may dismiss it, minimize it, or turn the situation back onto themselves. Instead of feeling supported, you feel alone, even when you're together. And then there's something even more subtle, but deeply damaging: gaslighting. Gaslighting is when someone manipulates you into doubting your own reality. They might say things like, "That never happened. You're imagining things. You're overreacting." Even when you're sure of what you experienced, at first it's confusing, but over time it becomes disorienting. You start questioning your memory, your perception, even your sanity. And that's exactly what keeps you stuck. Because when you don't trust yourself, you rely more on them. Another pattern you might notice is emotional inconsistency, hot and cold behavior. One day, they're affectionate, attentive, and loving. The next, they're distant, critical, or completely withdrawn. There's no clear reason, no explanation, just a constant shift that keeps you guessing. And here's the thing about inconsistency: it creates attachment. You hold on to the good moments. You wait for them to come back. You think, if I just try harder, maybe things will go back to how they were. But that version of them, the one from the beginning, is often not sustainable. It was part of the hook. Now let's talk about control. Because narcissistic behavior often involves subtle forms of control. Not always obvious, not always aggressive. Sometimes it shows up as jealousy, questioning where you go, who you talk to. Sometimes it's guilt, making you feel bad for spending time with others, or slowly isolating you from friends and family. It can even look like advice or concern, but underneath it is control. And the more control they have, the smaller your world becomes. Another sign is constant criticism, especially after the initial phase fades. They may start pointing out your flaws, your habits, your appearance, your choices, often framed as helping you improve, but it doesn't feel helpful. It feels like you're never quite good enough, and that's not an accident, because when your self-esteem drops, you become easier to control. You seek their approval more, you try harder to please them, and slowly your sense of self becomes tied to their validation. At this point, you might notice something important. It's not just about what they're doing, it's about how you feel. That's one of the clearest indicators. Do you feel anxious more often than calm? Do you feel like you're walking on eggshells? Careful not to say the wrong thing. Do you feel emotionally drained, even when nothing dramatic has happened? Do you feel like you've lost parts of yourself? Your confidence, your voice, your sense of clarity? These feelings matter because healthy relationships don't feel like this. They don't leave you constantly confused. They don't make you question your worth. They don't require you to shrink to be accepted. A healthy relationship feels safe, not perfect, not without challenges, but safe. You can express yourself without fear. You can disagree without being punished. You can be fully yourself without losing connection. If that's not what you're experiencing, it's worth paying attention. Recognizing these patterns doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean you made a bad decision. These dynamics can happen to anyone. They often develop gradually, subtly, and by the time you notice them, you're already emotionally invested. That's why awareness is so important, because once you can see the pattern, you can start to step back from it. You can begin to reconnect with yourself, your thoughts, your feelings, your boundaries, and that's where change begins. You don't have to fix them. You don't have to prove your worth. You don't have to keep chasing the version of them that only shows up sometimes. What matters is how you feel, consistently. Because at the end of the day, a relationship should add to your life, not take you away from yourself. So if something feels off, don't ignore it. Trust that feeling. It's there for a reason. And most importantly, remember this. You deserve clarity. You deserve respect. You deserve emotional safety, not confusion. Not manipulation, not constant self-doubt. Something better exists, and it starts with recognizing what's not right.